Last week was what? We talked about Daniel doing what last week?
And on his dream.
Well, interpreting dreams. Who had had a dream that couldn't be interpreted? Yeah, none of the magicians or other people could interpret that dream. And so, what did the king say he was going to do to all these people, these wise men and all these people? He was going to kill them. And so, how did Daniel come into all of this?
He went and asked the king for some time
He
to
asked
interpret the dream.
What was they going to do to him when he asked? They was fixing to take him out too. He was be one of the first ones they killed, and he asked for a little more time and asked the king himself for a little more time, and the king granted him a little more time, and then he had a dream during the night, and then we actually looked at what he said in his dream. A prayer of thanksgiving to God and praise to God. His main focus was last week on that. And Daniel, he prayed a prayer glorifying God, and the way he glorified God was he gave God credit for wisdom and power and sovereignty over everything, and that God exalts people and puts people in high position. And God had promised wisdom to him, and they granted that, knowledge, revelations, all this comes from God. And God is a light. And then he gave a special thanks. I thank thee and praise thee, O thou God of my fathers, who hast given me wisdom and might, and hast made known unto me now what we desired of thee. For thou hast now made known unto us the king's matter. Who's the us he's talking about? Who did he pray with?
Their friends.
The friends. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Yeah, he prayed with those. Now, we're going to look here. If we get there, we're going to see Daniel's interpretation of this dream is kind of different. All right, Joy, you want to read 24 and 25?
Okay. Then Daniel went in to see Arioch, who had been ordered to execute the wise men of Babylon. Daniel said to him, "Don't kill the wise men. Take me to the king, and I will tell him the meaning of his dream." Then Arioch quickly took Daniel to the king and said, "I have found one of the captives from Judah, who will tell your majesty the meaning of your dream."
All right.
26.
Wait a minute. Who is this Arioch? Who's he?
One of the king's people, I guess.
Yeah, he's the guy he was the head person, the head chief of the police, so to speak. He was the guy that was actually ordered to do the execution of the wise men, and but he and Daniel had established a relationship of some sort to where that they could talk to each other, and so that's really. And when he made that request to talk to the king, well then this guy says, "Okay, he'll take you in there." Now read 26 and 27.
The king said to Daniel, also known as Belteshazzar, "Is this true? Can you tell me what my dream was and what it means?" Daniel replied, "There are no wise men, enchanters, magicians, or fortune tellers who can tell the king such things. But there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in the future. Now I will tell you your dream and the visions you saw, as you lay on your bed.
All right. Now, who are these wise men and who are these magicians and soothsayers? What is a soothsayer?
The fortune teller?
A fortune teller. Turn over to Acts 16:16. Fast we look at that soothsayer. Acts 16:16. There's another word in this verse there that, buddy, you got that one?
And it came to pass as we went to prayer, a certain damsel possessed with a spirit of devastation and met us, which brought her masters much gain by
Soothsaying. It's divination. Now, what is divination? Possessed with a spirit of divination. What is
It says
it?
in the Bible, demon possessed.
Demon possessed. What would this demon be doing? This lady, this damsel, this young lady. What was he doing? This lady was telling the future or something, like fortunes, and who was making money off of her?
The master?
Yeah, she had some people that actually controlled whatever she did, and they set up a business around this, and she would tell you your future, and the word divination there, it's probably telling you what without being actually a spiritual, telling you what God had in mind for you, like in the future, and but anyway, they were using this, and King Nebuchadnezzar, he had a whole bunch of these. He had soothsayers, and he had wise men, astrologers, magicians there, and they would give him advice and stuff. Now, who reveals secrets? In verse 28, who reveals the secrets? God in heaven. Remember, Nebuchadnezzar has a god named, what was his name? Something. But he had his god, Barak, is that what his name was? And he had that God, but none of his God couldn't answer this deal. So the God of heaven, it's kind of important to know the distinction between just a God and the God of heaven. And especially back in these days when there was all these different nations had different gods. And Israel had the God of heaven. And like Egypt was existing, and all these big nations around, and Babylon and all these, they'd been in existence for a long time, longer than the nation of Israel, because Egypt was there when Abraham's children went into Egypt, and stayed there for 400 years. So all these nations had gods, and they had all these wise men, everybody giving them advice. But the God of heaven is the one that reveals the secrets. None of these other gods or none of these other people could do this. Now, how far did you read? Did you read through 29?
28.
You read through 28?
28.
All right. Autumn, you want to read 29?
While your majesty was sleeping, you dreamed about coming events. The revealer of mysteries has shown you what is going to happen.
What's he talking about here? As for thee, O king, thy thoughts have come to thy mind. What's Daniel telling the king here?
Saying that God revealed what's going to happen in the future to you.
Yeah, he said he revealed this troubling dream you had is a dream God gave you that's about the future. Now, and you remember King Nebuchadnezzar couldn't remember this dream. Cindy, you want to read verse 30?
But as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living, but for their sakes that shall make known the interpretations to the king, and that thou mightest known the thoughts of thy heart.
All right. Now, what is Daniel doing here? Is he saying, "Hey, I'm chosen of God. I can make this reveal this to you"? Is that what he's saying? No, he's being humble. He's saying, "I don't know any more than these guys, except that the God of heaven gives me this information." And what this is telling us is to always go to the God of heaven, the one true living God, and then to get our information and find out what he wants us to do. Now, in the previous verse we read, what is that latter days? What is meant by latter days, where Daniel was talking about his
This future.
It's actually the future. It's days that's coming later, right? It's a latter and they talk about in latter days things that's going to happen in Revelation, things that's going to happen in the future. And instead of saying future, they refer to it as the latter. Now, verse 31, 35, we're going to look at the king's vision. All right, Autumn, you want to read those?
31 through 35?
Yeah.
Your Majesty, in your vision you saw in front of a huge and powerful statue of a man, shining brilliantly, frightening, and awesome. The head of the statue was made of fine gold. Its chest and arms were of silver. Its belly and thighs were of bronze. Its legs were of iron, and its feet were a combination of iron and clay. But as you watched, a rock was cut from the mountain by supernatural means. It struck the feet of iron and clay, smashing them into 2 bits. The whole statue collapsed into a heap of iron, clay, bronze, silver, and gold. The pieces were crushed as small as chaff on a threshing floor, and the wind blew all away without a trace. But the rock that knocked the statue down became a great mountain that covered the whole earth.
Now, this is what Nebuchadnezzar couldn't remember. And then if he had remembered, do you think he could have interpreted it? If you just read that, what in earth this was a great and excellent, really bright image, but it was the form thereof, its form was terrible. So it's real bright and shiny, but it's ugly. It's going to be terrifying to see. So King Nebuchadnezzar he didn't remember this. Of course, his memory, one reason he couldn't remember it is because God is going to teach him that he is God. That's what I think the whole object of God making King Nebuchadnezzar the king, capturing Israel, bringing Daniel and the wise men and the 10,000 other people over there. All of this is to show King Nebuchadnezzar that his God is not the one in power. That God, the true living God, is the one in power. Now, this image head was of fine gold, and the breast and arms silver, his belly and thighs of brass. Now, he was kind of a wild-looking creature. Now, let's look at the interpretation, but don't lose your place there. That's 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. And now let's take these next verses. This is actual interpretation of this dream. 36 says, "This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven has given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowl and the heavens have he given unto thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all." He says, "Thou art this king, head of gold." So King Nebuchadnezzar himself is the head, is this beast head, right? They're this vision's head, and he's the head of gold. Now that's on verse 32. This image head was fine gold. So Daniel is interpreting that part as being King Nebuchadnezzar. And he's also giving God credit for putting King Nebuchadnezzar into his kingship, right? And that shows how much power that King Nebuchadnezzar had. Now, verse 39 says, "And after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee." So after King Nebuchadnezzar is gone, there's going to be another kingdom come up. And it's going to be less than King Nebuchadnezzar, right? Inferior to him. So he's going to be, this kingdom is going to be less. Now, there, and it says, "And another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear ruler over all the earth." And then it says, "And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron." So now if you turn right back over and look at those, it says, "His head was of gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet of part iron and part clay." Now, "And these shall bear rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom," this is the fourth kingdom after King Nebuchadnezzar. So you're going to have several years going to pass while this is going on. You're going to have Nebuchadnezzar plus 3 more kings before this all comes to pass. "And he shall be strong as iron, but he has a flaw." What kind of flaw does he have, this fourth one? He's mixed, isn't he? The iron is mixed with clay, so he has some weaknesses, right? Some real weaknesses. I mean, clay is nowhere near as strong as iron. Right? "And the iron that breaketh all these shall it break in pieces and bruise." Now, verse 41 says, "And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of the potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay." So this is going to cause a division in the Babylon kingdom. What usually happens after you have a bunch of divisions in a country, you get all kinds of conflict in a country, what usually happens to that country? It falls apart, maybe captured by other countries, becomes part, it's divided up, separate. And eventually, if things don't change around, eventually that country will be pretty much erased. And that's what happened to Babylon by the time about, I don't remember the exact number of years, but reading on ahead in there a little later, Babylon, before Christ came, this was about 550 BC to 600 BC, and so somewhere around 200 or 300 BC, there was no more. This nation is not anymore. This where Nebuchadnezzar is king, it's absorbed by other nations, and the Babylon city is destroyed. That's the reason they dig up those ruins and stuff on it. I read about, in the first one. So this is what the dream was. Now, if you had read over here this image, it was fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, and his bellies and his thighs of brass. If you read that, and the king, how would you interpret that? Would you interpret that as other kings, or would you say, man, that's something made strange, or what do you think? What do you think you might have done? Daniel interpreted it this way. What do you think you might have done? Could you have interpreted it? We might have had our heads cut off because we couldn't interpret it. Daniel told him what it was, and he also told him what it meant. And I'm pretty sure that King Nebuchadnezzar didn't really like what he heard, but he knew that Daniel had told him the truth, and that's what he wanted. Okay. Now, we stopped at 43, didn't we?
Yes.
All right. Autumn, you want to read, or Joy, you want to read those? Read down, 2 or 3 verses. Read down through 45.
Start on 43, right?
Yeah.
Or 44.
43, I guess.
The mixture of iron and clay also shows that these kingdoms will try to strengthen themselves by forming alliances with each other through intermarriage. But they will not succeed, just as iron and clay do not mix. During the reigns of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. No one will ever conquer it. It will shatter all these kingdoms into nothingness, but it will stand forever. That is the meaning of the rock cut from the mountain by supernatural means, crushing to dust the statue of iron, bronze, clay, silver, and gold. The great God has shown your majesty what will happen in the future. The dream is true, and its meaning is certain.
All right. Now, so what's going to happen to this nation that Nebuchadnezzar is in charge of? Whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall do what?
Not succeed.
Yeah, what are they going to do? They're going to mingle together, and the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another. What's that mean? That means we're going to be together, but we're not together. We're not good buddies. I mean, we speak and we go and we pass each other and do all this kind of stuff mankind did, but they were yet divided, and when you look around the earth today in a lot of these countries, I don't think the United States is one of these mixtures of all kinds of people. We're together, but we're yet not united. One for all and all for one, right? We're I'm for me and you're for you, and that's what they were doing here when eventually the Babylon collapsed because of this internal division and internal separation. And in the days of the king, shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom. Turn over to Luke chapter 1, verse 31 and 33. Luke chapter 1. Matthew, Mark, Luke
31 through 33. Autumn, you want to read those?
Mhm. You will become pregnant and have a son, and you are to name him Jesus. He will be very great and will be called the Son of the Most High. And the Lord God will give him the throne of his ancestor David, and he will reign over Israel forever. His kingdom will never end.
All right. Hold that place just a second. And then let's look back over at 44. And in these days, these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break into pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. So Daniel is 500 years before Christ, right? And Luke, he was a doctor type person, a learned man that wasn't one of the disciples. He wrote what the finding that he wrote about the disciples and got information from individuals and people and like that. And he is writing this about God setting up this kingdom. If you were to say something now, would you know in your heart that it would come to pass 500, start becoming to pass 500 years from now? That's a long time, isn't it? And Daniel, he said this is going to happen. He didn't put a date nor time on it, and he didn't put a how it would happen on it, but he said that there's going to be an everlasting kingdom set up. And so Jesus is, the birth of Jesus is the beginning of that kingdom that God's setting up, that he's talking about here.
What exactly does that say when it says king over Israel? Just like it says Israel over Israel.
The king, he'd be over the Israelites. Is that? Was that in the Luke?
Yeah, 31 through.
The
and it says, and he will reign over.
And he shall reign over the house of Jacob forever, and his kingdom there shall be no end.
But doesn't he reign over all of us, not just Israel?
Yeah. And behold, thou shalt conceive, in his name Jesus, he shall be great and shall be called the Son of the Highest, and God shall give him the throne over his father David, and he shall reign over the house of Jacob forever, and his kingdom there shall be no end. When he's going to do that, we read about in Revelation, is when God gives him the power to come back to earth and take all of his followers and like that. And when I don't know exactly, this just talks about the house of Jacob, but from what I can tell, when you become a Christian, you're adopted into God's family, and as it is, you then have the same rank and same advantages, actually a little more than the Jewish people had when they were directly under God. See, over here in Daniel, they're directly under God. Over here in this time, Jesus came. Then when he died and was risen from the dead, then the Holy Spirit comes to live within us. So we had, over here, God dealing with people direct. Now he deals with people through the Holy Spirit individually. And he adopts everybody that believes and trusts in Jesus Christ. He adopts them as into the family, which would be in this case, the way this is said, we'd be adopted into the house of Jacob through Christ, which would be the father nation. Jesus is nation father. And when Abraham was selected back there, he was one person, and then he got Isaac, and then Isaac got Jacob and Esau, and then Jacob got 12 sons, and the Israelites followed Jacob's lineage all the way down, and that's what he means by the house of Jacob. And when we're saved, then we're adopted into that family. So it's, and Paul talked about us being adopted, and an adopted son has more rights than a natural born son in our society here and now. If you adopt a child, that child is going to have more rights than a natural born child. And so we're adopted into the family of Jacob. That's what that's talking about. I don't know that I could find verses that says that exact right now, but I know that that's what it's talking about there. Now, let's see right fast here how Nebuchadnezzar responded to this. Autumn, you want to read there? Read 46 through 49 there. This will be what King Nebuchadnezzar did.
Yeah, I lost my place. I went to look and took my pen out.
Yeah, Daniel
40, what did we say?
46 through 49. This will be the response of King Nebuchadnezzar.
Okay. Then King Nebuchadnezzar bowed to the ground before Daniel and worshipped him, and he commanded his people to offer sacrifices and burn sweet incense before him. The king said to Daniel, "Truly your God is the God of gods, the Lord over kings, a revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this secret." Then the king appointed Daniel to a high position and gave him many valuable gifts. He made Daniel ruler over the whole province of Babylon, as well as chief over all his wise men. At Daniel's request, the king appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to be in charge of all the affairs of the province of Babylon, while Daniel remained in the king's court.
So, just looking at that a little bit, what did the king answer to Daniel? What did he do?
He bowed and worshipped him.
Yeah, he said, of a truth, it is your God is a God of gods. So he's recognizing God as higher than his God in this verse, and he's Lord of kings. So he's in charge of the kings. He's Lord over the kings of the earth, and he's the revealer of secrets. He's the one that gives revelations of what's going to happen in the future. And then he says, he gives to Daniel, he makes Daniel a great man in the nation, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
So God put the Israelites into captivity under King Nebuchadnezzar. But now, just like Joseph, when he put Joseph over there in the land of Goshen, he was in a leadership position to prepare a place for the Israelites to come and stay. And God has moved Israel under Nebuchadnezzar here for a reason, and this reason here, I think, is to prove that He is the God of gods, and then all through this book of Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar goes through some real serious things. He hadn't learned. He's confessed it, but he hadn't really accepted it yet that he's not. He's still going to think he's the God. Instead of thinking that the Lord is God. And so he gave Daniel a bunch of gifts and made him ruler over all the wise men in Babylon. Now, who did he get to help him? Who did
Daniel get to help him?
Yeah, who did Daniel?
3 friends.
Yeah, his 3 friends. Now he had prayed with these guys. They had been in there. They'd been in the same building or rooms with Daniel. They was
they come over, they were brought up there together, and all four of them was recognized as more wise than anyone else. And God gave all four of these guys this power. And so now they've gone from being, they're just young men at this time. At this age, they're just young men. And now they're in charge of right under the king. Now that's when you get in charge of things right under the king, that means you're probably making all the decisions that's happening, right? I mean, you go through the king and tell the king what's going to happen, and the king asks you, well, what do you think needs to be done? So you make the decisions. So when you are in that kind of a position, like Daniel, and God had put Daniel and Shadrach and Meshach in, you think that all those Israelites that's captive is going to be mistreated? I don't think so. I think they're going to get treated just like God wants them to be treated through these four guys. And they're going to, see, they haven't really established themselves as a nation over here yet. You have Judah on the south part, and you have Israel on the north part. They're not just all one part. This is that country is kind of divided, and part of it's called Israel and part of it's called Judah. And after this, somewhere after this, it's all united under Israel. And then when Jesus comes, then he provides a way for us to be adopted into this family. And next week, we get to learn something about these other three guys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So if you get a chance, and take a look at next week, and we'll look at what happened to them and see how their faith prevailed.